Hey, what's going on YouTube? Today we're ranking the top 10 Cav artifacts at the end of the War of the Last Snows. Okay, now before we get started, a couple quick rules. First, we're only considering these artifacts as they apply to Cav marches. Some of these artifacts are dual use. They might have use in a Cav march and an infantry march, for example. But for the purposes of these rankings, we're only considering the usefulness for Cav marches. Second rule, we're considering these artifacts at max power right now, August 2025. Some of these artifacts have exemplar versions, some of them don't. If you're a fan of one of the artifacts that doesn't have an exemplar version, hey, maybe these power rankings are too bad for you because we will consider the exemplar versions versus the non-exemplar versions. And obviously the artifacts that have an exemplar version are going to have a leg up. Okay, having said that, let's get started. Coming in at number 10 is the Cloak of Stealth. The Cloak of Stealth, its best days are really behind it. You know, during Season 1, this thing was great. You'd stealth your cav up, you'd sneak behind enemy lines, and you just wreak havoc on their back lines, on their farmers, etc. Those days have largely passed. Now that we're running 4 or 5 cav marches at a time, stealthing one legion doesn't really do us a whole lot of good. Most of the usefulness of this artifact has gone away. Now, it still does have some limited uses. In particular, if you need a target for your staff play, the Cloak of Stealth still is the way to go, but this is an epic artifact whose best days are behind it, and it's just clinging to you at number 10. At number 9, we got the Wolf Woman of Haelor. This is really one of those artifacts you use if you want to be a menace, but you don't really want to have an impact on the battlefield, right? Use this when you're, on the other side of a river or you're on top of a cliff. You want to jump down. You get a single charge in against some unsuspecting, some AFK mage or archer, and then you jump right back and you do an emote to piss them off. Doesn't really do a lot of damage, but hey, you get to do a little, and you do this long enough, maybe you get a decent merit report out of it. Now, this thing can also be used as sort of a budget blink. And the way is you trigger it and then you duck into like a resource node or a city or something like that. Get the blink effect in without having to blink back. So it is useful for that. However, when compared to the blink artifact, I do think this is inferior, and it is just at number 9 on my list. At number 8, we got Sorland's Blade. Now, Sorland's Blade's really the artifact you use when you want to do some damage, but your march is just too slow. Sorland's Blade does have a nice 18% boost to march speed. That's nice. And it does have cav attack, but the issue with Sorland's Blade is it doesn't do that much damage. 3,200 is really kind of not great in today's game. And the other thing, it only hits up to 2 enemy legions. You really want to hit more than that. Sorland's Blade is fine, but all the other advanced cav artifacts are just better than it. And it doesn't make the cut for most of my marches, which is why it checks in at number 8. At number 7, we got the Kingslayer. Now, one of the things the Kingslayer really has going for it is it does have an exemplar version. And if you get the exemplar version, you can get the damage factor up to 4,000. That's real nice, and it can up to 5 enemy legions. And frankly, I think the animation on the Kingslayer, it's my favorite in the game. So why doesn't the Kingslayer score a little higher? A couple things. As a Generation 1 artifact, it still only has the plus 5% damage dealt, minus 5% damage reduction when you start it up. The other thing about the Kingslayer is its special effect, immediate execution of units that have less than 10% of the remaining units, or 12% if you have the exemplar version. I don't find that all that impressive, right? Normally when I'm rolling with my cav ball, I want to fire my artifacts off quickly at the beginning of combat to get a leg up in combat and also to get the cooldown started so I can get my artifacts back quicker. And so I'm not typically looking to end the fights with my artifacts. I'm looking to begin the fights with my artifacts. And so I don't find this 10% or 12% effect coming into play very often. Still, the Kingslayer, it's been in the game since the beginning. A very strong artifact, and it's number 7 on my list. Coming in at number 6 is the Oath of Stormpeak. Now this is sort of the oddball here. It doesn't do direct damage. Instead, it makes a clone of your legion, and the clone fights along with you for 10 seconds or 12 seconds if you have the exemplar version. A couple of reasons I like the Oath of Stormpeak. First of all, as a G2 artifact, it's got this 7.5% damage modifier, damage reduction. And obviously, if you get the Exemplar, you get another 10% on top of that. It gives you a pretty good passive if you use it with Ferondil. And if you have Ferondil built out, and in particular, if you have Ferondil's pet built out, this will give you a clone of that and an instant rage cycle, so it does do some good burst damage as you get your rage cycle off. The downside to the Oath of Stormpeak is you do have to have a very good, essentially Ferondil March. You have to have a good pet, and if you don't have that, the Oath isn't going to do a lot for you, and you're basically mostly going to hit one Legion instead of doing AoE damage like most of your other top tier Cav artifacts. That's why I have it at number 6. Alright, starting out our top 5 is the Storm Arrows. You know, this artifact has been in the game since the beginning, and I really didn't appreciate what it was good for when the game first came out. I thought this was the artifact that you used with your Cav when you needed to get over a river or up a cliff or something like that. I mean, hey, it can do that, but the real benefit of Storm Arrows is being able to disrupt the enemy formations. When you're out there hunting with your Cav and you see that those mages, those archers that are trying to run away, or you're fighting an enemy Cav ball and you've got the upper hand and they're trying to retreat, Storm Arrows is how you stop them, all right? Now, I know some of you are saying, hey, you had Wolf Woman of Haelor ranked much lower. Why is Storm Arrows better? A couple of reasons. First, Storm Arrows has the Exemplar. I don't have it, unfortunately, but you get that Exemplar version. It gives you a lot better passive stats. That's great. That in itself makes Storm Arrows much better. The second reason Storm Arrows is a better choice is it has better stats for you. The Wolf Woman of Haelor has hit points times 2. Storm Arrows has attack times 2. Now, right, hit points is a great stat, but for Cav in particular, you prefer attack to hit points because hit points help you survive longer, but as a Cav player, how you survive longer? You survive longer by winning the fight and moving on. If you get tied down, hit points aren't going to help you. So you want as much attack as possible to finish off the enemy as quickly as possible, and that's why Storm Arrows are better. Coming in at number 4, we got Lunaris. Now, Lunaris does a massive damage factor, 4,400. It's up to 3 legions, and the buff it gives you when you activate it is awesome. You get 15% damage dealt for 10 seconds. That's amazing. You also get a 10% damage reduction for 10 seconds. That's great too. That's why I love Lunaris. The passive buff is also underrated here. It basically gives you 40% movement speed, as well as a hero skill damage buff of 20% when you lose camouflage. Now, why is Lunaris not rated higher? The passive buff here only comes into effect when you're camouflaged, and the only hero that can give you camouflage is Nea, so it is kind of a limited artifact unlike some of the others. Still, I think this is a great artifact, and that's why I have it at number 4. Coming in at number 3, a bit of a curveball, Greymar's Warhammer. Ostensibly, this is an infantry artifact, but I think this is super powerful with Cav. I think this is overall the best artifact in the game right now, and even for Cav, I think it's the 3rd best artifact. What does it do? When you activate it, it stuns up to 4 enemy legions for 4 seconds, or if you have the Exemplar version, 6 seconds, does a little bit of damage. The stun for 6 seconds, that is so powerful for Cav. Alright, first of all, you're running against that enemy. Maybe it's an enemy Cav ball. They're trying to get away. Greymar's Warhammer, if you have it up, you can get 6 more seconds of DPS. That's usually enough to finish a fleeing enemy. Alright? On the other hand, you're in trouble. The enemy Cav ball has surrounded you. You hit this. You got 6 seconds to get away. That's usually plenty. The other thing is what's the bane of Cav infantry, and specifically counterattack Gorish Skogul infantry. You hit this, Gorish Skogul doesn't counterattack for 6 seconds. That's awesome. Any downsides here? Yeah, the unit stats, some of them are infantry defense, so obviously with a Cav March you don't get the benefit of that. And Legion defense, well, you'll get that, but you really don't care about defense as a Cav March. This is some of the reasons I don't have this ranked even higher, but even with these poor stats, I think this artifact is awesome, and I basically don't send my Cav out without it. Coming in at number 2 is the Spring Blades. Okay, let me tell you some awesome things about the Spring Blades. First, its entire damage factor, if you add it all up, is 6,000. That's the highest in the game. And you can also get this exemplar and get it even higher. Even though this came out in Season 1, it counts as a Generation 2 artifact, which means if you have it 6-starred, you get a 7.5% bonus instead of a 5% bonus. I love that. The third thing is its passive here. Gives you 30% attack whenever you gain passion. If you have a Cav rally going, the Spring Blade's passive effect is actually the best passive effect you can get for any of these Cav marches for a rally purpose. So that's awesome as well. All right, I don't have the exemplar. I wish I did. This is super strong. Any downsides? I mean, you need to have passion to activate the additional effect. There are 4 Cav heroes that can do passion, but it's not everyone. You have to include one of them. That's not a big downside, but that is something. The other thing, the damage factor here, you get 2,000 on the throw, 400 per second for 5 seconds on the hover, and then 2,000 on the return. A good enemy can dodge a lot of that, particularly the return. You know, you can get around that by recalling the blades early, but then you're losing some of the throw. So the 6,000 damage factor, you don't always get all of it. The other thing about this 6,000 damage factor, it's not entirely front-loaded. All these are quibbles. I think the Spring Blades are awesome. I wish I had the exemplar version, and I have it at number 2 on my list. Okay, let's talk about what I consider the strongest Cav artifact in the game right now, and that's the Wolfhowl Horn. Alright, obviously you can get the exemplar version, as I do here, and if you have the exemplar version, the Wolfhowl Horn does 5,000 damage factor to up to 3 enemy targets. Okay, that's great in and of itself, but the other thing is anything that you hit with this gets tremble for 3 seconds, which basically means they can't do anything for 3 seconds. That's great when you're running down a foe trying to run away from you. 3 seconds is often enough to kill them, and it's also great when you need to get away. All right, and even at the beginning of a combat, let's say you're fighting an enemy cav ball, that 3 seconds when you can still do damage, when you can still do things, and the enemy's just stuck there getting hit, that's extremely powerful. You also have a very nice additional effect here. Whenever you hit a target with a rage skill, they bleed for 600 damage factor per second for 3 seconds. So an additional 1,800 damage factor on the top. I love it. All right, now this only can occur once every 90 seconds. You really want to use this with Urag so you can hit up to 3 targets, give them each a bleed for 3 seconds. Awesome. The only really downside to the Wolfhowl Horn is its secondary attribute is Legion Defense. I mean, defense is, it's a useful stat, but you'd rather have Cav Attack. So that's the only downside here. But otherwise, I think this is awesome. It does massive damage, and it also gives me a crowd control. I think it's the strongest Cav artifact in the game right now. And so those are my top 10 Cav artifacts right now at the end of the War of the Last Snows. Obviously, as time goes on, we get new artifacts, we get new exemplar versions of other artifacts. These rankings will change over time. And ultimately, I decided these rankings by asking myself, if I had the best version of each of these artifacts, which of the ones would I prefer to bring into combat? But that's all I got for you today, and until next time, you stay classy, Belleron.